No decision has been taken yet on sending it abroad. This despite certain media reports suggesting that to be the case. The probe body, the Accident Investigation Board, will be deciding on the location for the analysis of the black box. There were media reports which said that it was possible that it will be sent abroad because it cannot be analyzed here in India owing to that damage. But the Civil Aviation Ministry has issued a statement today saying that all conditions of the black box are currently being tested for technology, for security, for safety, and only after that will a decision finally be taken. But what we know for sure is that the black box of this particular flight, which holds all the answers to what may have happened exactly 1 week ago, has sustained some damage. Maria Shakil, who broke parts of the story earlier today, is with me live. Maria, the Civil Aviation Ministry making it categorically clear that no decision has yet been taken. The black box is still being scrutinized to assess what the condition of it is at this point of time. So a technical study, safety, security considerations, all being looked at right now, and only post that will a decision be taken on whether it needs to be scrutinized here or elsewhere.
That's right, Shiv. That's what sources in the DGCA have been indicating clearly to NDTV, that yes, that there is a problem with the black box. Remember, black box is very key in piecing together as to what really happened in those last few moments before the crash. What was the reason of the crash will become clear only after the cockpit voice recorder and the data recorder are retrieved. The black box is damaged, although the black box, remember, Shiv, can actually manage a great degree of heat, and also it is capable of ensuring that the data which is there inside is safe. But now sources clearly saying that whether the black box data will be retrieved here in India or not, or whether it will be sent abroad, is not clear. At the moment, what we can confirm is that the safety, technical and security aspects of the black box is being reviewed, and then only they'll decide whether it can be retrieved here in India or whether it has to be sent abroad. But at the moment, no call has been taken. Okay, no call has been taken just yet, and we have to trust the Accident Investigation Board on what decision needs to be taken by the government. Ultimately, we on NDTV will not be jumping the gun. Maria, thank you very much for bringing us that. Now, you're probably wondering, because the black box contains the crucial data, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder record basically a full picture of what happened inside the aircraft, inside the cockpit, all parameters of that flight, which lasted all of 32 seconds, in addition to what happened on the ground. Now, step one, which details the sequence of what happens next, and I've put this together tonight, is, as we speak, like you heard Maria say, there is a technical inspection of the black box that is taking place right now by the Aviation Accident Investigation Board, that's the AAIB. Step number two, there is a safety inspection of the black box. Remember, it is a reinforced gadget or device, but it requires careful handling. Step number three, there are security considerations. One cannot simply send it abroad just like that. It is a piece of evidence in an accident that killed 241 people in the air and many people on the ground, and therefore there are security considerations around the black box, and therefore no decision can be taken lightly. And therefore, step number four, any government decision on whether the damage sustained by this black box means that it needs to be sent abroad for analysis because the Indian forensics laboratories are unable to access that data, that is a decision the government will take once a full assessment of that damage is made. And finally, the black box analysis, whether it happens in India or abroad, like I said, is a decision that will be taken. Probably it will take a few days, maybe even a few weeks for that to happen. And finally, step number six, analysis will shape the final or interim crash report that finally comes out. So the cockpit voice audio, the flight digital and data recorder containing all parameters of the flight, that will finally shape what the crash report emerges as. As you heard our reporters and our coverage say, black boxes are incredibly survivable objects.
They are capable of surviving extreme gravitational pressure. They are capable of sustaining extreme heat, depths in the ocean. Take just these three examples that I've picked out of how black boxes have been found in extreme conditions. In 2009, there was Air France Flight 447, which crashed into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It was found 2 years later at a depth of 3,900 meters. It is one of the most extreme situations in which a black box has been found. The result was the black box was miraculously intact and all data was preserved and helped nail the reason for that crash. Then there was the 1998 Swiss Air Flight 111 crash, again crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. The black box in this case was found to be severely damaged, but digital reconstruction allowed the investigation team to reconstruct what was contained in the black box, and therefore the investigation was completed successfully. More recently, Flight 610 of Lion Air in Indonesia, which crashed into the sea in 2018 in the Java Sea. The flight data recorder was found immediately, but the cockpit voice recorder took 2 months to find at great depths in the sea. The black box was found to be intact. It had sustained some damage, but that was fine. And the investigation did lead to one of the largest investigations in aviation history against Boeing. That was the first of 2 crashes of the Boeing 737 MAX. Now, what happens with the black box if it sustains some kind of damage, and what is the process by which it will be assessed? Whether India can analyze and interpret what's in the black box, or whether it needs to be sent abroad. We have with us to help us sort of decode and understand how this works, Captain M.R. Wadia, founder president of the Federation of Indian Pilots, and M.R. Sivaraman, DGCA and Additional Secretary, Ministry of Civil Aviation. He's a former member of both of those organizations. Captain Wadia, if I could come to you first, the black box, if it sustains a certain amount of damage, how long will it take to assess whether, Indian investigators can retrieve the data here, or whether it needs to be sent abroad, sir?
That, as you rightly said earlier, let the people who are doing the investigation decide as to what is the extent of damage. See, the external damage may not have damaged the internal data whatsoever. So that is a totally separate thing, and I think the people who are examining the black box are in a better position to decide whether it should be done in India or go abroad. That is of very little interest to any of us, because the data will be available. Now, as far as the black box is concerned, all of us have been asking, the people have been asking, okay, since it has been retrieved, why can't we know what happened in the accident? Why can't we know what the pilot did? Why can't we know? So let me just give you a little bit of quality of the information and quantity of the information. First of all, the quality, whatever the aircraft does at any point in time, whatever the pilot does, if the nose is up, it is recorded. If the nose is down, as to how many degrees it is down, etc., everything is recorded totally. Which instrument is showing what? To give an example, let me elaborate a little bit. For example, if the aircraft needs to get more power, at what time, exactly at what time did the pilot open the throttle?
Yes.
At what extent did he open the throttle? How much did the throttle, how many degrees did it open? And at what stage, at what time did the engines start revving up? It may not be exactly the same. The engines take a long time for the power to develop. So at what stage, at how much power is developed, at what stage is also assessed. Furthermore, now what is important, if they have analyzed what is the power available, then they put it on the simulator to see in a normal aircraft, if this was the rate of climb with this power, how much did this aircraft generate? Was it actually, it will determine whether it is overloaded, not overloaded. So a hell of a lot of information can be assessed from this. So let's not jump to conclusions that since it is available, give us the new information.
I'm glad you said that, because, this does take its own time, but there are, of course, concerns. There is a sense of urgency for sure, but the investigation must be allowed to do its job at the in the way that it's supposed to happen without any external pressure of any kind. Mr. Sivaraman, black boxes are constructed and built to sustain incredible amounts of damage. So even if this particular black box of AI171 has sustained some level of damage. There are examples in the past where data retrieval has been possible, sir. So even in a worst case scenario, and I don't want to assume things, we have reason to be confident that the data will have been preserved.
Yeah, of course. But there is one point which has been missed all through. And I think Captain Wadia will be able to support me on this. There is a technology by which a ground monitoring system can monitor real-time basis the entire information that is gathered in the DFDR. I wonder whether Air India has set up that facility here, because these facilities have been in existence. These technologies have been in existence since long, for decades. I know of it even when I was the DGCA here. Therefore, first of all, ask this question of Air India, whether they have set up a facility to monitor on real-time basis the information that is gathered in the DFDR in all their aircraft in flight. Why is it being done? It's being done because once they see there is some deficiency or some problem at the next port of call or the next airport where the aircraft lands, they will be ready with the spare parts or engineers necessary to correct the deficiency.
Yes.
So, Mr. Shivaru, please ask Air India whether they have got that facility.
We have,
if
sir.
they had that facility, they would have known what happened to that aircraft yesterday.
We did, Mr. Sivaraman, just to clarify on that, we have asked Air India, we have asked Boeing and Air India about this, but obviously in the midst of this investigation, no specific answers have come out because of obvious sensitivities. So I just wanted to clarify that. Carry on, sir.
Okay. Now the second point, as far as the DFDR data is concerned, I became DGCA after the Airbus 320 crash in Bangalore. I was forced to become DGCA. So at that particular point of time, when the DFDR data was decoded here, we flew that aircraft according to the DFDR data and found out what was a mistake within 7 days. So it is possible, as Captain Wadia said, that as soon as you get the information from the DFDR data, we would be able to establish the reason for this crash. As far as the CVR is concerned, I haven't seen any report that CVR has been damaged. So it should be possible to recover at least the CVR data, the last few moments of conversation between the pilot and the co-pilot. And as far as carrying this DFDR abroad is concerned, it was done in my time also in the case of one aircraft because most of it had been damaged. So it had to be reconstructed.
Yeah.
And this facility was available at that time only in Russia. But now probably they are available. It will be available in NTSB in USA also. And it should be possible to reconstruct the data even if the DFDR inside film has been damaged.
Captain Wadia, you want to add to that, to the points that Mr. Sivaraman has made?
He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
There is provision. However, the quantity of data is so huge on the DFDR that all of us is not able to be downloaded to immediately. But some defects in the engines or defects in some parts, etc., are available and that can be rectified. So the amount is huge just now. But I think what we specialists are more bothered about is whether we'll get a true assessment from the people who are doing the investigation. First of all, as I've indicated earlier, I'm not at all happy. The head of the investigation board is a secretary, a bureaucrat from the government. That is certainly not acceptable. All over the world, all accidents, serious and small, light accidents, are investigated by professionals. And not just by any pilot or any lawyer or a judge also. There are people who are trained in accident analysis, and it's a huge science, and which is almost deficient in India. We do not have people who are trained in accident analysis and are practicing accident analysis, which is prevalent all over the world. But however, I'm glad that so many agencies are involved today, so it will be difficult for anyone to hide or suppress any information. Boeing is involved, the government of America is involved, the UK is involved, India is involved, and a lot of other agencies, and therefore it will be very difficult to suppress. But when it can be suppressed, it will be. Please understand that. I'll give you two examples. In India, also, when there was the DGCA was required to investigate they didn't want to investigate, and they didn't do it. Even after the order of the Bombay High Court to do an investigation, they did not do it. So that is the arrogance of power. When you have authority and power, you can get away with anything.
Okay.
Also, I'll give you another small example. People who's like Boeing will be bothered about their own reputation, and so they may try to. Therefore, I'll give you another example. From Germany, people who are actually doing the investigation have sent me an email directly, which I'm aware, which is with me also, which says, however, since although we are aware of the full implications of this incident, we have to protect our own interests also. So everyone tries to protect his own interests, but since it's a very wide place, it's very difficult to suppress any evidence.
Okay. Very quickly, Mr. Sivaraman, I'm almost out of time. What does this accident seem like to you? You know, while we wait for the investigation itself, there are 2 crash videos. You've seen what's been said so far. What do you think happened, sir?
Well, it's very difficult to make any wild guess, as I have seen a couple of accidents during my period. One in Palam, Tu-154, which crashed, which landed upside down, but fortunately all the passengers were safe. And the other one was, of course, the Bangalore crash. And the third one was an aircraft which went into the mountains in Imphal. I've been there to Imphal site also. It was about 3,000 feet above the sea level where it crashed. See, it's extremely difficult to come to any conclusion because all pilots are given good chits to both the pilot and the co-pilot. So pilot error, usually the errors are pinned on the pilot. In this particular case, I wonder whether that could be done. My own feeling is there must have been something really wrong as far as the engines are concerned. Either the fuel supply got cut off for some reason, or there has been an electrical system failure. Okay. I've also been a pilot. I've studied all these manuals. Thanks to Mr. Wadia and others, they have made me fly all these aircraft when I was DGCA. I wonder whether any DGCA now takes interest in going to the simulator and trying to fly the aircraft. These pilots taught me how to fly, knowing well that I will use it against them when an opportunity arises. But I thank all of them to make me fly at 747, 310, every aircraft I have flown. And every engineering manual I had studied, I had sat with them in the hangars and worked with the mechanics also. But in this particular case, one important question that should have been asked, maybe it has been asked, who certified the aircraft for flight? Because there is a certificate given by the engineer that all the systems are go condition and the pilot accepts that. Okay. Thereafter, of course, he carries out his own checks. But then there is a certificate which is given by the engineer who certifies the aircraft. And this particular aircraft has landed a few hours before or something from a London flight. So some engineer would have certified.
Let us hope, sir.
Has been interrogated, we do not.
Let us hope that this question and many of the others will be answered soon. We will wait for the process to carry itself out. But there is a sense of urgency over what happened and people will want answers, and we will continue to ask the questions and report the facts. Thank you very much, Captain Wadia and Mr. Sivaraman, for joining me here on India Matters. We've got more breaking news coming in now. And it's our big defense interview tonight here on India Matters. The government's senior-most weapons scientist has just spoken to me, Defense R&D Chief. You're about to see him live here on India Matters, speaking for the first time on a weapon very few people have heard about. You've been looking at images of Iran's hypersonic missiles raining down on cities of Israel. Now you're about to hear the first word on India's own hypersonic missiles. That's right. India has a hypersonic weapon that's in the works, and you're very soon going to be hearing even more about it. Dr. Samir V. Kamath, it's my privilege to introduce onto India Matters tonight. He is the chief scientist. He's the Director General of the DRDO, that's the Defense Research and Development Organization. Basically India's top weapons scientist. Dr. Kamath, good evening. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on NDTV. I want to ask you first off, because we are still in the atmosphere of the post-Operation Sindur phase, Dr. Kamath, and it must have been a source of great pride for you to see the BrahMos in action there. DRDO is one half of the entire BrahMos project. What is the DRDO doing to make this amazing missile more effective, sir?
So BrahMos is already a very effective missile. It is a supersonic cruise missile, which is a very precise missile. It hits the target where you want it to hit. However, we are increasing the range of BrahMos missile. We are also looking at making it smaller so it can be mounted on all our air platforms. Today's BrahMos can be mounted only on Sukhoi 30. But we are working on making a smaller version of BrahMos, which we are calling it BrahMos NG, and then it can be mounted on any of our platforms.
So that's very interesting to hear. Currently, a Sukhoi 30 fighter can carry one BrahMos, but you've just heard the DRDO chief say that a smaller version of the BrahMos, so more of them can actually be carried. So you can imagine what a next Operation Sindur theoretically will look like. My second question to you, Dr. Kamath, what is the status, if you can share with us, of India's hypersonic missile? We do know it was tested for the first time last November. It made a huge number of waves. We are seeing Iran use hypersonic weapons in Israel right now. What is the status of India's own?
So we are working on two types of hypersonic missiles, hypersonic cruise missiles as well as hypersonic glide missiles. The hypersonic glide missile is in a much more advanced state. We have done one development trial, and we expect that in the next 2 to 3 years we'll complete all the development trials and then it should get inducted. The hypersonic cruise missiles is a technology where we have recently proven scramjet propulsion for more than 1,000 seconds, which is a major breakthrough.
Yes.
And we hope that the government will sanction a program to convert this scramjet propulsion into a hypersonic cruise missile weapon system. My estimate is it will take about 5 to 7 years before it can be inducted.
What other future missiles is the DRDO developing, Dr. Kamath? I asked that in the context of the Akash missile, the BrahMos missile, several other weapons that are from the DRDO stable, seeing combat just now during Operation Sindur. So what are our future missiles looking like?
So we are working on a variety of missiles, air-to-air missiles, where we are going for higher ranges than our present Astra, which we call it now Astra Mark II and Astra Mark III. We are looking at air-to-ground missiles, which are known as Rudram II, Rudram III and Rudram IV, which will have increasing ranges. These are air-to-ground missiles. Then we are looking at variety of surface-to-air missiles for air defense applications. You are aware of our program Kusha. We are also working on a directed energy weapon for anti-drones. So this will be based on both lasers as well as high power microwaves. Then we are working on variety of gun systems. ATAGS is already inducted. We are looking at how to mount ATAGS on a moving vehicle, which is a mounted gun system. Then we are working on a light tank.
Yes.
This also, we have completed our development trials and it should start user trials soon. Then for our naval applications, we are looking at a lightweight torpedo, a heavyweight torpedo, variety of mines. So I think our pipeline is quite strong, and in the next 2 to 3 years, several of our weapon systems and sensors will get inducted into our services.
Dr. Kamath, I must ask you tonight about, fifth generation and stealth fighters. Yesterday on India Matters, we did report that Pakistan will be receiving the J-35 stealth fighter from China very soon, long before India gets its hands on any of these kinds. We do know that the AMCA is an indigenous effort to build a stealth fighter. Can you tell us where that is in terms of progress, sir?
So fifth generation aircraft was sanctioned to us by the government in 2024. We have started work on it. This is known as advanced medium combat aircraft, and We are looking at a new execution model for AMCA. As you are aware, earlier all our platforms such as LCA Mark 1, LCA Mark 1A and LCA Mark 2 were done together partnering with HAL as our production partner. But in the AMCA's case, we are looking at expression of interest to identify a partner. This partner can be HAL, can be a private sector, or it could be a joint venture between a HAL and a private sector, or between two private sector companies.
And my final question to you, Dr. Kamath, because I know you're busy, there are all these projects on your hands. I wonder how you get any time at all. But the big lessons learned from Operation Sindur, like I said at the start, we've seen so many Indian-made, Indian-designed weapons deployed in combat action, in the heat of the action of Operation Sindur. Any lessons you'd like to share with us tonight?
I think a lot of lessons have been learned from the previous conflict, and we are seeing how to implement these lessons in our future weapon systems. It is very clear to us now that all your weapon systems have to work in an electronically denied environment. So your systems will be denied GPS, they will be denied their communication. So we have to develop weapon systems which are fully autonomous, which can work in any electronically denied environment.
Dr. Kamath, thank you very much for your time. We wish all of your teams, all of your brave scientists, men and women in the capital, across the country, in different parts of the world really, the very best in building India's next family of weapons. We salute you, we thank you, and we are grateful for the incredible work that your teams have done. And before we go into a break, I do want to tell you that the co-pilot of Air India Flight 171, Clive Kundar's last journey took place today. His legacy was honored. He was in his early 30s. He had his entire life ahead of him. His family, his colleagues, all united to pay tribute to the talented young pilot.
The steady sound of drums and the cry of trumpets echoed outside the Kundar residence in Goregaon West. A tearful farewell as the final rites were performed for First Officer Clive Kundar, one of the two pilots who died in the crash of Air India flight AI171. Friends, family and neighbors gathered at his home for an emotional goodbye. Clive's mortal remains were kept at the residence for a few hours before cremating it. His parents, sister and close relatives sat by his side in quiet grief as friends and neighbors paid their last respects.
He was a very, very ambitious man. I know him for the last 5-6 years. We've been working out very regularly in the gym. All here are my gym friends only. So very ambitious, lot of dreams. Amazing human. He was very down to earth. I never seen him saw anything like that. He was always smiling, would always greet anybody, no egos about him.
Later, as the coffin was taken for cremation, a brass band played slow, dignified music. The family walked closely behind, leaning on each other for strength. At the Civan cemetery, prayers were offered by priests and family before Clive was laid to rest.
May his soul rest in peace. That's it.
How did you know him?
We are gym buddies since last 3 years. He was a gem of a person. Very down to earth, very humble.
Clive had joined Air India in 2017 and had clocked over 1,100 hours of flying time. On June 12, he was in the cockpit alongside Captain Sumit Sabharwal when AI171 crashed within seconds after takeoff in Ahmedabad. What caused the crash is under investigation.
I mean, we are all Clive's gym friends, gym buddies. We all used to meet at that same time to work out and all. Of course, he used to travel, we used to travel, but other than that, he was a very great person. I'm like shattered, we are all shattered, we're not.
A young life cut short and a promising career in aviation lost. But for those who knew Clive, it is his warmth and humility they will miss the most.
Hello, Moto.
Motorola, India's leading AI smartphone brand.
That's huge. That is a biggie. It's out there.
Gold Plus Clear Glass. Par ho ya near, sab kuch dikhe clear.
News is not just headlines. It is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and bring you the unparalleled clarity you deserve in a world clouded by misinformation. We are bold, we are direct. Newsnight, for the news in your interest. Only on NDTV 24x7.
That's huge. That is a biggie. It's out there.
Gold Plus Clear Glass. Par ho ya near, sab kuch dikhe clear.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaroop. Only on NDTV 24x7.
As the Iran-Israel war escalates, Indian students in the crossfire.
हमें as soon as possible evacuate किया जाए.
War zone worries grip parents. The next Indian mass evacuation ahead. NDTV at Ground Zero.
Is your business future ready? Join the 13-week strategic ESG certification program for business sustainability and growth for CXO and business leaders by NDTV, Terry and Zenora. Master global ESG frameworks, gain real-world tools, and lead with impact. Starts July 13th. Enroll now and power your.
It's a question that's going to be asked repeatedly perhaps this year, especially in the context of what's been happening between India and the US president over the last few days and the last few weeks. Donald Trump, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, all of it throwing up a big question. Can India trust President Donald Trump? Now, the India-US relationship is a very strong one. It has always enjoyed a great deal of continuity. But now there are questions over whether India needs to recalibrate and prepare for the next steps in the world of Trump. And someone who understands these things perhaps better, actually not even perhaps, definitely better than most, I know, is Dr. Ashley J. Tellis. He's Tata Chair for Strategic Affairs at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. His is a voice that anyone who's important listens to in the world of international security, defense, and Asian strategic issues. A voice that is heard above all others by lawmakers, the leadership on issues of US-India relations, and zooming in, of course, to the whole Trump-Modi dynamic. Dr. Tellis, so good to see you. Thank you very much for your time here on NDTV. I want to start with the very specific, because we're talking about Modi-Trump, because yesterday was a day full of events. There was a 35-minute phone call, which I'm sure you've heard about, while Prime Minister Modi was at the G7 and Trump had dialed him. Shortly thereafter, there was a lunch that the US president held for Pakistan's army chief. But I want to ask you first about that lunch for the Pakistan army chief, that came yesterday and became a huge talking point. What did that look like to you?
I think it was the president's personal decision to host the lunch. I'm not quite sure there was a universal consensus within his own administration on the wisdom of doing this. But President Trump is, as we know, an eclectic personality. He fancies himself a peacemaker. He genuinely believes that during the most recent India-Pakistan crisis, his administration and he himself personally had a very important role to play in the making of the ceasefire. And so I think he saw the lunch with General Munir, Field Marshal Munir, as an opportunity to sort of build on what he believes he achieved. And the reason why I think he invited the Prime Minister was this hope, this fanciful hope, that they could all three be at a table together. They could hash out all the outstanding issues, and that he would come out at the end of it burnished in his reputation as a peacemaker.
Because this lunch that the president had with General Field Marshal Munir, Dr. Tellis, was, after that 35-minute phone call where the Indian Prime Minister is said to have very clearly stated that the ceasefire after Operation Sindur was something that India had achieved by virtue of its military actions, and it had nothing to do with trade deals or mediation, and that India didn't need any mediation. A short while thereafter, you saw Trump pretty much owning that ceasefire once again and saying, this was all me. What did you think of that? Again, brand Trump signature. This is the world of Trump. This is how he operates.
I think this is in many ways vintage President Trump, right? I think the Prime Minister made a very compelling argument, and I think the diplomatic record will bear that out, that a substantial element of the success of the ceasefire were the back-channel conversations between the Indian government through its military officials and the Pakistani government through Pakistani military officials. The US did play a role. Certainly, I think Secretary Rubio was a very, very useful interlocutor to both sides. But for us to claim credit that this was somehow magically, our contribution, I think exaggerates our role. But, you can't keep a good man down, and you can't keep President Trump from his very strongly held beliefs about his own role in the matter. So I think even though the Prime Minister really attempted to walk him through the sequence of events, I'm not sure it is going to have a lasting impact.
How should India interpret this then, in your view, Dr. Tellis, that India has repeatedly, diplomatically, via the Prime Minister as well, made it clear that it does not support this idea that it was the United States or Trump himself who was responsible for this ceasefire. But for Trump to continuously repeat that remark, because it may be one small thing, but it's very important from India's perspective, given what a big deal Operation Sindur was.
Absolutely. So I think you have to go back to the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are what you alluded to in your introductory remarks. First, the US-India relationship is generally in a very good place. And we should avoid doing anything that makes the current scratchiness into a permanent feature of the relationship. I think that is not helpful either to India or the United States. Two, we have to recognize the eccentricities of President Trump's personality and his worldview. And, take him seriously, as they say, but not literally. Recognize that he does want to play the role of a peacemaker, even though the United States as a country at this moment is singularly, not suited for playing that role. And so I think it is useful for India to continue to emphasize that a third-party mediation is not required, that the two countries, India and Pakistan, are entirely capable of handling these matters on their own.
Yes.
And continue to engage the administration more widely beyond the president on a range of issues that currently are very important to both sides. And I would focus on economics, and in particular the trade negotiations, which have been going actually reasonably well.
Yes.
I would focus on putting together the building blocks for enhanced defense cooperation. And I would focus on how the two countries can work together in other parts of the world. Yeah. And those are things that are of common interest. And I think that's really the way forward, especially in these tumultuous times when you cannot really, rely on political personalities, in a sense, to deliver what is necessary for both sides.
It's interesting, Dr. Tellis, that you say, don't take him seriously, but don't take him literally. That's a hugely useful advice, which I'm sure the Indian Foreign Office has calibrated itself to deploy from the first presidential term of Trump, and this one much more so given the size of his mandate as well. But in this particular case, and just to close this part of this discussion on India-Pakistan relations, is there going to be a meeting point? Do you see more frictions between India and Trump on the issue of India-Pakistan relations, given that Trump has insisted on constantly hyphenating, saying, both sides are excellent and both sides are my good friends, and he clearly has a personal belief that he wants to make some kind of a grand achievement as far as achieving peace on his watch?
I think, that kind of a posture certainly has the potential to increase the anxieties and the irritations in New Delhi. That is simply baked into the character of Trump's approach to this problem. The important thing, I think, is for India not to get derailed by what are essentially strategic distractions. And Trump's current approach in his diplomacy to India and Pakistan, I would put in the category of strategic distractions. So focus on the fundamentals. Let's build on what we've achieved. And, just remember one thing. At the end of the day, Trump is still a one-term president.
Yeah.
We have to look at putting in place the foundations that will outlast him and not necessarily be derailed by responding to every one of his tweets or every one of his claims.
Indeed. I mean, he is a one-term president, Dr. Tellis, but, there are a good number of years left of the President Trump 2.0 term. Do you see any other major turbulence between the two sides? Moving on from the India-Pakistan issue, that's closed. We've heard your view on that. But there are very substantive discussions on these issues of trade, for instance, where there is potential for turbulence. Once again, because of Trump's brand of extreme positions, trying to pin down the other side, not really in the mood to negotiate, not really in the spirit of it being a two-way conversation, my way or the highway kind of approach. Do you see the possibility of more turbulence in this relationship?
I mean, there is certainly a chance that what we've achieved in the trade negotiations so far is not brought to a happy conclusion. And that may simply be because at the end of the day, the president believes that what India has put on the table is not enough. I don't think that is the view of the US negotiators who are engaged in these conversations. They have been deeply impressed by how seriously India has approached the trade negotiation, the kinds of positions India has taken in order to reach an agreement. But at the end of the day, it is still the president's call, right? So there is a small chance that these things could still, become problems. But I'm hopeful that as these negotiations continue, we can bring at least the first interim agreement to a successful conclusion. That buys us time because it takes India out of the current penalty box that it is in right now because of US trade policy. And it creates some room for us to think about the bigger question. And the bigger question is, what kind of a larger trading relationship can India and the United States have? That is not something we can fix in 3 months. It's certainly not something we can fix before July. But that's really where most of our attention will be focused on if we can deliver an interim agreement to the president that he's satisfied with.
People-to-people ties between the two countries, the business relationship has always been something that has, outlasted dispensations and administrations, Dr. Tellis. One particular area of friction in the last few weeks, months have been the issue of visas. Whether it comes to the H-1B visas, whether it comes to green cards, whether it comes to most particularly student visas recently. These are all, of course, underpinned by domestic political considerations and decisions taken by Trump personally and his advisors. Could these things get worse because these are substantive parts of the relationship?
I fear there is always that danger. No one is going to defend the right of illegal Indian immigrants to stay in the United States, right? I mean, the Indian government has not done that. The US government is well within its rights to ask people who have outlived their permissions to stay to leave. But the larger question really is, how do we think about the mobility of our peoples across our borders? And this is where, to be very candid, I think the United States is on the cusp of making a very big mistake. Because we have thrived, we have benefited from being an open society which has been welcoming of foreigners, of immigrants to the United States. It is really in many ways the secret sauce of American power. But the Trump administration has a very different view. They really want to walk back the clock on openness to immigration in ways that are quite unprecedented, in recent times. And there is a danger that India, like many other countries, will be affected, by these strictures, which are now sort of being institutionalized. But most important of all, and this is what I care deeply about, is that it weakens the United States as we pursue these policies. So yes, the near-term challenge is a bilateral, crisis of some sort. But the longer-term problem is that we weaken our capacity to build our own power by relying on the talents of people who live outside our borders. And on this count, the US-India relationship has been a stunning success over the last 30 years. So why would we be deliberately looking to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs? I mean, again, as you know well, Shiv, I mean, this goes back to the tumultuous domestic politics in the United States.
Yes.
And until we settle these issues among ourselves, I fear that many other countries will become collateral damage.
Dr. Tellis, coming now to another area that I know you're looking at very closely, it is what's happening between Iran and Israel right now. The US president has made it, more than clear that there could be some kind of an intervention. There's talk of, large-scale, strikes where the United States might actually assist Israel as well. How are you reading what the next steps may actually look like?
Well, it has become very clear that Israel has achieved remarkable successes in the campaign so far. But it has not been able to neutralize completely Iran's capacity to build a nuclear weapon at some point in the future were it to so choose. There are deeply buried underground Iranian facilities that have proved to be immune to Israeli military action so far. So the question facing the United States now is, should we enter this conflict and help Israel finish the job? Or do we stay this one out in the hope that the damage that Israel has done so far is sufficient to bring Iran to the negotiating table once again? and we really push hard on a solution through negotiations. That's really the question that Donald Trump faces. So that's a strategic question. Do you join in a war, help Israel finish the job, but then earn the eternal enmity of the Iranian people? Or do you sort of sit on the sidelines, hope that the Israeli military action has pushed the Iranians to negotiation, which they claim they are willing to do, ask the Israelis or lean on the Israelis for a pause until we can test out Iranian intentions, and then hope that we can get an outcome through a negotiation that is favorable for all concerned. Then there is a domestic political problem, right? Because Trump campaigned and became president on the premise that we would not be involved in foreign wars. I don't think he likes the prospect of getting involved in a conflict with Iran. It has the potential of splitting his base very dramatically among those who believe this is a great opportunity to destroy the Iranian program and even the regime once and for all, and others who are fearful of another Iraq-like, adventure, which then costs us another 20 years in terms of American blood and treasure. So I don't envy the position that he is in, but if he makes the wrong choice, we will be saddled with crises at both ends, because there is a risk that at the end of the day, the Iranians will say, we have to move to a weapons program. And that is one consequence. And the other consequence, of course, is that the Iranians come to the negotiating table, string out a negotiation, and we never get a successful conclusion.
Which appears to be the case right now, because, just as we began this broadcast, Dr. Tellis, Reuters reports that about 400 missiles just lifted off from Iran and were heading towards Israel in what is, I'm guessing, the 11th or the 12th such salvo in the last few days. So as far as, Iran being in a mood to negotiate right now, at least for the moment, that doesn't appear to be the case, though, of course, these things change dramatically in a hot war scenario of this kind. Do you see this accelerating a decision from President Trump?
I think, well, there are two issues involved here, right? The Iranians, at least so far, seem to have conceptually made the distinction between the Israelis and the United States.
Yeah.
So they know that they are fighting a war with Israel, but they have been careful to keep open doors with respect to the United States. Now, depending on how this latest episode of conflict sort of plays out, the real question is going to be the same one that we discussed a few minutes ago facing President Trump. Does he join this conflict or does he sit this one out? My fear is that, we've got bad choices at both ends of this equation.
Very true. And, I did want to bring up Russia and Ukraine as well, but that is so much of a longer conversation. I thought I'll leave it right to the end. But I did want to squeeze in China because, how can we not bring China up? Your reading, Dr. Tellis, especially in the last few weeks, of how President Trump has engaged China. He's said very nice, polite things about Xi Jinping in the middle of a hot trade negotiation there. Things have sort of cooled down a little as far as the conversation is concerned. It's all very unpredictable. But how do you see that relationship? Because that really is the great game.
I'm glad you asked about this, Shiv, because to my mind, that is the central question going forward, right? What is China's trajectory in global politics? What is its relationship to the United States? And what are the implications of both those questions for the global community? I fear that even on this one, Trump is actually more iconoclastic than people realize.
Yeah.
That his administration may have anti-China impulses in their DNA. But Trump thinks of China primarily as a trade problem and not as a strategic problem. And because he thinks of it as a trade problem, his inclination is to try and find a deal with the Chinese that somehow makes the trade problem go away.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe that even the trade problem will go away if we get a successful deal with China. But leave that aside for the moment. Let's assume we get a trade deal that is satisfactory to Trump. Then I think we might find ourselves in a very awkward position where we begin to think that the China problem, quote unquote, essentially disappears.
Yeah.
Because we've now got a new modus vivendi on trade. And all the larger issues which are connected to China's rise, China's challenge to American primacy globally, China's security interests in the Indo-Pacific, all those issues get moved to the sidelines because the president is very satisfied that he's got a big, beautiful deal with Xi Jinping. And so I am deeply worried about the course of US-China relations, because after all the efforts that have been made in the last several years to think seriously about competition with China for the first time, we could be on the cusp of simply walking away from that inherited shift, simply because the president is transfixed by trade problems to the neglect of everything else.
That's an incredibly useful perspective, and you're right. I don't think most people see it that way at all, and that in many ways explains some of the things he's saying and some of the decisions he's taken vis-a-vis China. My final question to you, Dr. Tellis, and I wish we had more time because I do have so many questions, but my final question to you would be about Putin. About the Trump-Putin dynamic and where you think that's actually going. That's seen some unpredictability as well. People have seen, friendship. They've seen cordiality between the two leaders. They've also seen Trump being quite embarrassed by the manner in which the war took a devastating turn recently with what Ukraine did deep inside Russia and Russia's potential response as well. Your view on the Trump-Putin dynamic and what you think it's going to yield next.
So it's really hard to get a good fix on what Trump actually thinks of Putin. He certainly tends to give him the benefit of the doubt on all the big issues that divide the United States and Russia. And that is somewhat unsettling.
Yeah.
In his own, in the recesses of his consciousness, I think he genuinely believes that Ukraine is the author of its own misfortunes, that it's Ukraine that has brought about the Russian invasion of their country. And therefore, he tends to look at Putin and Russia more generally with more forgiving eyes than I think is simply warranted by the facts. Now, unfortunately for Trump, I think Putin has really no interest in the kind of ceasefire that Trump was hoping that Putin would agree to. But he is willing to become party to what is essentially an empty process of negotiation, with the objective of essentially stringing this negotiation out long enough so that he can achieve his military aims on the battlefield. So the idea of a negotiation with Ukraine right now is really aimed more at the United States than Kiev. It's aimed at keeping Trump in good humor. It's aimed at keeping Trump essentially on the sidelines, on splitting the Western coalition, which is arrayed against Russia, and hoping that while he achieves all these objectives, he can make significantly important military gains that then confronts Kyiv with essentially with no choice, but to simply live with the fact that it has lost territory and lost substantial elements of its sovereignty.
And I'll end this interview where I began it, Dr. Tellis, with the India-US relationship. No doubt you know that this weekend, Sunday, after a couple of postponements, an Indian astronaut is going to be on board the Axiom 4 mission that heads to the International Space Station. We're all looking forward to that. Would you agree that this is a reminder that, beyond all the bluster and the frictions that we often see in diplomacy between the two countries, even two big friends like India and the United States, there is this very substantive, close relationship at so many levels?
Absolutely. I mean, I always keep saying that in many ways, the United States and India are fated, to be good partners. The only uncertainty to my mind is whether they can be great partners, right? And I think both sides have to do some soul searching in terms of how they approach the other. Because if we get this right, we can really do something very good for ourselves and for, stability in the global system. But I do not want to underestimate the landmines, that lie along the way. And what you've seen in the last few weeks is a very cautionary reminder about these perpetual landmines which haven't disappeared.
On that sobering note, we'll end this very illuminating interview. Thank you very much, Dr. Tellis. All the very best, and grateful for your time here on NDTV, helping us demystify, navigate, and understand one of the intriguing relationships, perhaps, of our time. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's a wrap on India Matters. Thanks so much for watching. Maria, my friend, is up next, and she's just scored the big political smasher interview of the season. Total blockbuster, Maria.
Yes, and we have other big blockbusters also lined up, Shiv. Yeah. 3 top legal eagles will be speaking to NDTV in just some time from now. Good evening, this is Left, Right and Centre, and I'm Maria Shakil. We have a power-packed show lined up for you with top newsmakers. First up, the politician who we all want to hear from. Dr. Shashi Tharoor has spoken to NDTV on leading the multi-party delegation to the United States post-Operation Sindur. And what does he have to say about the lunch meet between Field Marshal Asim Munir and US President Donald Trump? And also Donald Trump's repeated claim on him brokering the ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Coming up also would be a legal heavyweights of the country on the probe panel report on Justice Yashwant Verma. The report says that there is enough proof to call for his removal. We have the former Solicitor General Harish Salve, former Attorney General Mukul Rohatgi, and senior advocate Mahesh Jeth Balani. All of them will be sharing their views on this probe panel report. But first up, our big exclusive with Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Hello everyone and welcome to this special conversation. We are being joined by Dr. Shashi Tharoor, senior Congress leader and veteran parliamentarian. Dr. Shashi Tharoor has been on a whirlwind tour of multiple countries, leading the government of India's charge in convincing the countries around the globe with regards to Operation Sindur. But Dr. Shashi Tharoor has also been traveling post that, so it has been very difficult to catch hold of you, Dr. Tharoor. So thank you so much for giving time on NDTV. You have emerged as the biggest backer of Operation Sindur and the harshest critic of Pakistan. Dr. Tharoor, how do you look at the lunch meet which happened between General Asim Munir and US President Donald Trump?
Well, as you know, the White House spokeswoman said that this is since General Munir had recommended Mr. Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, it was a thank you gesture, which is entirely, fine. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if Mr. Trump wants to call somebody for lunch because he was recommended for a Nobel Peace Prize, who are we to question that, Maria?
But Dr. Tharoor, that happened, hours after Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump's telephonic conversation, which lasted roughly around 35 minutes, in which Prime Minister Modi clearly, categorically spoke about how India never sought any third-party mediation and will not do so in future, setting the record straight.
Absolutely. And I think that message is something that we also, in our delegations, conveyed very clearly to our American interlocutors. I myself had the privilege of speaking to Vice President Vance, and though so far we have not gone public about the conversation, now that the Prime Minister has publicly announced that this is what he has said to the President, I can convey to you that I said exactly the same thing to the Vice President, who understood it fully. And there was absolutely no disagreement or pushback from their side. They fully understood that mediation is not something that we in India can accept. The very idea of mediation implies an equivalence between two parties who need to be mediated between. But there is no mediation possible, no equivalence possible between terrorists and their victims. There is no equivalence between a country that dispatches terrorists across the border and a country acting in self-defense. And this message was understood clearly by everyone we spoke to, not just the Vice President. We also met with the Deputy Secretary of State. We met with a very important cross-section of senators and congressmen. And in every single case, this message was made crystal clear. So I can assure you that what we are hearing today
is exactly the Indian stand. It is a stand that India and India's delegations have taken consistently. And I might add that we have taken in previous conflicts also. I mean, the truth is that in 65 and 71, you already saw an evolution. 65 war ended with a third country's involvement in the Tashkent thing. But in 71, as you know, the Simla discussions were only India and Pakistan. And the conclusion was all dealings between our two countries would be bilateral, and we've stuck to that. India, since then, has taken a very strong view that we have no difficulty talking to Pakistan. We speak all the languages they speak. The problem is the one language we don't speak and won't listen to is the language of terrorism. So when they inflict terrorism upon us, we will meet force with force, is the clear message we're giving to the Pakistanis and to anybody else who will listen. Secondly, Maria, you must remember that Operation Sindur advertised its intentions from the very start. And here I'm not revealing anything that's confidential. It was in the briefings by the government. The morning after Operation Sindur, they said very clearly that this is an act of retribution against terrorists. We've been very careful not to hit any Pakistani government sites, not even any Pakistani military sites. We have only hit terrorist bases that are well-known, well-established, and that too of organizations that have been proscribed by the United Nations Committee and that were also on the US State Department's terrorist wanted list. So there was absolutely nothing on our side that made this an Indo-Pakistan conflict. It was an India versus terrorism action. And what we said very clearly to everybody who listened to us in all the countries we went to was, don't make this an issue of India-Pakistan. Don't make this an issue of Kashmir. It is only an issue of terrorism versus our right to defend ourselves against terrorists. And believe me, we got full understanding everywhere. You know that the country of Colombia withdrew an earlier statement they had issued in which they had expressed sympathy for quote-unquote Pakistani victims, once they understood the context in which we had acted. And thereafter, in every country we went to, I can assure you that there was full understanding for our position. So I just want to stress, India has taken a very clear stand. We are only reacting against terrorism. We said to the world that if Pakistan chooses to hit us because we have taken retributive action against terrorism, if they've hit us, we're going to hit them back, and we'll hit them back as hard as we can. But if they stop, we will stop. And the moment they stopped, we stopped. That is very clearly what occurred. So I just want to stress to you that as far as we were concerned, there was no question of us needing to be persuaded to stop. You see, mediation is when two sides are fighting and somebody comes in the middle and says, please don't fight and we'll give you this and that. No such thing happened. We said from the very beginning that we would stop the moment Pakistan stopped. They signaled to our Director General of Military Operations they wanted to stop. We said, fine, we're also ready to stop. As far as the Americans are concerned, they may well have felt that they have put pressure on the Pakistanis, which is something you and I don't know because we don't know what the Americans said to the Pakistanis. But if that is the thing, that the Pakistanis were, contemplating a nuclear option or something dramatic, and the Americans told the Pakistanis, don't do that and press them, and thereby the general thinks that Mr. President Trump should deserve the Nobel Peace Prize because he prevented him from using dangerous weapons, whatever. If that's the story, that's between the Americans and the Pakistanis. I don't think we in India should sit here worrying about what they said to each other. All we know is that the Pakistanis called us, and the Pakistanis, having taken a real bashing on the night of the 9th, 10th of May, they wanted to stop. So that's the story that we understand. That's the story to which we are privy.
Okay. Dr. Tharoor, because Donald Trump continues to reiterate that and repeat his claims that he was the one who brokered ceasefire. As a former diplomat yourself, do you see this deceptive diplomacy hurting or helping India?
No, I don't think it's diplomacy at all. I think it's Mr. Trump expressing his understanding of something in which, frankly, as far as we are concerned, he was not directly involved. The people who called our foreign minister, called our national security advisor, and there was one call to our prime minister, are all known to us. They did not include any personal call from President Trump during Operation Sindur. So, President Trump honestly has every sort of right to speak for himself, and none of us can decide to put words into the mouth of a foreign president or indeed to challenge what he says. I think one of the reasons that India stayed silent.
Dr. Tharoor, there are many in the opposition and also within your own political party, the Congress, who are attacking the Prime Minister with regards to the ceasefire. And they are demanding an explanation, perhaps a special session. What are your thoughts? Do you think there is a need for the Prime Minister and the BJP to brief the audience here as well, the politicians and various political parties here in India?
Personally, in any democracy, I believe it's always healthy to confide in the public, confide in the opposition, and doing so in a session of parliament would obviously be a healthy thing. So that's not something that I dissent from. But having said that, on this particular issue of the ceasefire, it seems to me that the position of the Indian government was telegraphed from day one. I was watching television like everybody else, watching the briefings by the Foreign Secretary and the two military officers. And from the very first day, the statements were unambiguous. We are avoiding creating conditions for a war. If they decide to hit us, we will hit back. But we have no desire to prolong this. We will stop the moment they stop. This was said every single day of those 4 days. So when indeed the stoppage came, it was not a surprise to me. I'm surprised that some people were surprised. I did see that some of the sort of passionate right wing in our country were exercised and they wanted the war to continue and to decimate Pakistan and so on. But the fact is that the intention of the action had never been directed that way. And indeed, we in the delegations were saying to our foreign countries, we were not going to war with Pakistan. We were going to war against terrorists. This was essentially an action against terrorism. And it was very much to be seen in the frame of counterterrorism. We took action against known sites of terrorist organizations, identified terrorist organizations, and at the same time, we sent the message that if there are terrorist attacks on our country, there will be a price to pay. That's essentially what it was all about.
Okay.
And to my mind, therefore, to try and make this into an Indo-Pakistan issue, to make this into something that has to do with perennial disputes between the two countries and so on, this is absolutely not the case.
Okay.
We were taking action on well-announced grounds, and that we had telegraphed very clearly to the world and to the Indian public, whoever was listening to television, exactly what we were doing in the spirit in which we were doing it. So, to my mind, there was no doubt when we stopped that we had to stop.
Okay.
If the Pakistanis asked for a stoppage and we said, no, we want to continue, that would have changed the entire thing. It would no longer have been possible to defend this as a pure counterterrorism operation. It would then have become a full-scale war between the two countries. But we had never signaled such an intention. We had consistently signaled the opposite.
Last couple of questions, Dr. Tharoor. Political observers say that you and your party are drifting apart. You also spoke about difference of opinion today. How will you define the relationship with the Congress today? Your relationship with the Congress party today?
Listen, I'm very much somebody who has stayed in the Congress party and loyal to it for the last 16 years. Many of my own colleagues and party workers know that the very close bonds we have. In fact, the question came up in the context of a Malayalam question about the by-election taking place in the part of the place called Nilambur in Kerala. And I said that I wish the Congress candidate well. I wish him all success. He is a friend of mine. In fact, I think that as far as I'm concerned, there is no doubt that the hard work of the Congress workers deserves the reward of victory. And that as far as I'm concerned, the fact that the Congress, as an institution, the Congress's values and the role of its workers, these are all things I hold very close to my heart, that if there are any differences of opinion, it has only been with some elements of the leadership. I don't want to go on beyond that because this is hardly the time to be discussing such matters. I said if there are any differences, they can be discussed behind closed doors between the people concerned. And that's precisely where I wish to leave it. I have absolutely no desire to discuss internal politics at this time, and particularly in the context of the questions that you've been asking.
All right,
Thanks
Dr.
very much, Mari.
Tharoor, thank you so much
All the best
for your time here on NDTV. Now on to the next big story. The case of pile of cash, which was found at the house of former Delhi High Court Judge Yashwant Verma. That happened back in March. Now, a 3-member panel of senior judges has recommended the removal of Justice Verma. The panel has said that there is enough evidence of cash at the judge's house. It has further added that there is strong inferential evidence of cash removal. Remember, this was a 3-judge committee which has also concluded now that the cash was removed early morning on March 15th. NDTV has accessed the panel's report, and let me take you through some of the incriminating findings in the 64-page report. The committee holds that the money cash was found in the storeroom located within the premises of 30 Tughlaq Crescent, New Delhi, occupied by Justice Verma, the source of which could not be accounted for by Justice Verma. Moving on to another damning part of the report. Access to the storeroom was with Justice Verma and his family members, and well monitored without any outsiders getting access to it without permission. The probe committee, in fact, recorded testimonies of 55 witnesses, and one of the witnesses has actually said, and this is witness number 8, Bhavar Singh, who is the driver of the Delhi Fire Services. He says, as I entered, I noticed the right-hand side, and in front there was a large pile of cash, only of rupees 500 lying on the floor. I was shocked and surprised at such large amounts of cash thrown on the floor. I saw this for the first time in my life. So finally, what really is the conclusion? Looking at this now, the committee is firmly of the view that there is sufficient substance in the allegations raised by the Chief Justice of India, then CJI Sanjeev Kumar, and the misconduct found proved is serious enough to call for initiation of proceedings for removal of Justice Yashwant Verma. Remember, the indication that has come in from the government is that there will be impeachment proceedings which will be initiated against Justice Verma during the upcoming monsoon session, which begins next month. So what now in this case? Former Solicitor General of India, Harish Salve, is joining us live. Mr. Salve, I really appreciate your time, sir. The 3-member judge panel, these were all senior judges, sir. They have submitted their report and they nailed Justice Verma. Would you then say that this is an open and shut case? And what happens to the impeachment proceedings? What, according to you, is the way forward, sir?
Of course, there is an immediate problem. The immediate problem is how is Justice Yashwant Verma going to be dealt with in a manner that restores some semblance of credibility which has been damaged by this unfortunate incident. But there is a larger problem also. It's the elephant in the room which nobody is willing to talk about. And that is how, where have our systems gone wrong? There are two things which need to be considered. Why has this problem come to pass? Just think of this, Maria. If this kind of incident had happened with somebody who was a civil servant or somebody who was in political life, by now the whole institution, including the Supreme Court, would have been thinking in terms of special investigation teams and CBI and accountability and monitored investigation. And the court should not create an impression thereby that where it is one of their own, a different set of rules apply. If this had been the house of a minister where this incident had taken place, would it have been enough to say that the minister must now resign and go away? Or by now the media would have been screaming, why is the minister not in jail, correct? So if a public servant has been found with such large amounts of unaccounted cash, what happens to the criminal justice system of the country? That's one question which looms large. Now you have the Ramaswamy judgment, where Supreme Court said you cannot lodge a police complaint without the permission of the Chief Justice of India. That was That was a makeshift arrangement till a proper institutional mechanism was set up. Unfortunately, the institutional mechanism which was set up has been trashed by the Supreme Court itself, and they struck down the NJSA. And you have now no institutional mechanism by which accountability is ensured. The second is impeachment. Impeachment continues to be in its old form in the process of parliamentary domain. And there again, the judge will be entitled to, a committee will have to be formed, the judge will be entitled to a hearing, post-impeachment. If you remember in the Ramaswamy case, Mr. Civan went and appeared to defend Ramaswamy in Parliament. And he argued for 2 hours, 3 hours in Parliament. I don't know if the judge insists on his right for Parliament to hear him, that will have to be done. So, and why? Just because he's a judge? So what I'm saying is impeachment was not meant to deal with problems like this. Today, there is a large amount of cash. Does the Prevention of Corruption Act not apply? It does. What happens if there is unaccounted cash? The presumption of the law is it's deemed to be unaccounted money under the Prevention of Corruption Act, unless you can explain the source. Now, why is the law of the country not taking its course? Why are we even discussing this on TV? Why is there a question of what will happen now? Would there be a doubt if it was any other citizen? And this is the real problem of this case. We have tied ourselves in knots. The judges, I'm sorry to say, have tied themselves in knots. Yes, they've done it out of good intention to protect the independence of judges. But what about protecting the integrity of the system? It is now established that this whole collegium system, it doesn't act with alacrity. How old is the incident now? The incident happened, in November or December or sometime like that? We are now in May.
Mr. Salve, as you pointed out rightly, it has been 3 months. Then what should be done? Should there be a criminal proceeding based on this report, and because this is a panel which was set up by the Supreme Court itself, or can there be only the impeachment proceedings which is scheduled for the next month when the monsoon session of Parliament begins?
Let me be very clear. First of all, after 3 judges, committee has found Justice Verma to be prima facie guilty. I'm deliberately using the words prima facie, of possessing unaccounted cash. What is the delay in now allowing the CBI to register a case and investigate it like any other act of corruption? And that has to be the basis for the impeachment. And it is well settled that civil and criminal proceedings can run side by side. So if the law of the land applies to you, I mean, we always use that famous epithet, howsoever high you may be, the law is above you. Why is that not in play? And they should do it. And what are we waiting for? I mean, unfortunately, impeachment is the only process we have, so we have to work it. But I think there has to be a debate in the country. Do we need to revive the collegium?
Yes.
Do we need to revisit the Supreme Court judgment by which Supreme Court said any interference with the collegium system takes away from the independence of judges? And where are we left today? We are left with a dysfunctional system.
Yes, that's right, sir. You have raised a number of questions, particularly with regards to the appointment of these judges. Do you think the cleaning up of the judiciary has to happen from within, or the executive legislature, as they have clearly intervened, as legislature will be conducting the impeachment proceedings? Then what happens to the separation of powers?
See, the power to amend the constitution is only with Parliament. Okay, so if Parliament has to make a law, it's only Parliament which can amend the constitution to put an institutional mechanism in place for judicial accountability. So there is no question of distance between the institutions. Parliament will be doing its job. And I remember a very powerful statement made in a very gentle voice by the then Attorney General Shri Lal Narayan Sinha, who was one of the most respected lawyers, a lawyer who I've really looked up to. When I was appearing with Mr. Palkhiwala in the Minerva Mills case, which challenged 42nd Amendment. And you know what Mr. Lal Narayan Sinha said? He said, it is true that without the Supreme Court, the freedoms in the Constitution cannot survive. But he said, don't ever forget, without Parliament, democracy and the Supreme Court will not survive. So each institution has its place, and the primacy of Parliament has to be recognized. Except in narrow cases where the Supreme Court finds an act of Parliament to be unconstitutional, each institution must have its place. And where it comes to making laws, Parliament and Parliament alone makes laws. So there is no question of being a judge in its own cause. Doesn't the Supreme Court decide cases involving people in public life? Doesn't the Supreme Court decide cases involving judges? So that's not an argument. Parliament has to address A, the problem of Justice Verma, B, the problem of a system which has become so dysfunctional that 4 months or 5 months after the incident, we are discussing what should happen next. Nobody knows. No, there's no clarity on what is to happen next. So, you know, on that question, on what you've asked me just now, on that doesn't, as they say, the tail hangs on that question, right? We are in a situation where we don't know what to do with this. Why? Would you be asking me this question if cash had been found in a minister's house, if cash had been found in a secretary to the government's house? No. Why are you asking me this question when it comes to a judge? That's the point which we need to address.
So let me ask that question to our next guest. Harish Salve, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Mukul Rohatgi, former Attorney General of India, is joining us now. Mr. Rohatgi, the 3 judges panel report accessed by NDTV has 2 very damning paragraphs. And I'm going to quote a part of this, and it says very clearly, access to the storeroom was with the justice and his family members and was well monitored without any outsiders getting access without permission. And then it goes on to say that highly suspicious items and not small denomination could not have been placed without the active consent of Justice Verma or his family. This is a 64-page report, sir. Where do we go from here onwards? Where is judiciary headed?
Now, Maria, I have read the report and I have great regard for the 3 judges, their intelligence and integrity. That's not in question. But I must regret that after going through the report, I am convinced that the conclusions of the report cannot stand for more than 5 minutes in a court of law or in a properly constituted inquiry under the impeachment motion mode. And why do I say that? Now, Maria, let me pose a few questions. Number 1, how much was the currency? Number 2, how much was burnt and how much was unburnt? Number 3, whether the notes were genuine or fake. Number 4, why did not the police / fire brigade seize the currency? Number 5, why was not an FIR or at least a preliminary inquiry registered? Why was not any investigation done? Why and how did the police not report it immediately, in as much as why was action not taken? Why, after it was brought to the notice of the Chief Justice the next morning, how come the judge was sitting in court for 5 days? Why did not the Chief Justice react? And finally, I have actually seen the house where the judge was residing. My brother-in-law, former judge of Delhi High Court, Putin Sanghi, was living in that house. So I am pretty familiar with that house. They are 1 acre houses. The storeroom was a makeshift kind of a room. It is not a part of the living quarters of the judge. The rear entry to all those Lodi estate houses or Tughlaq Road houses was never manned. Who has kept the money, nobody knows. I mean, there are so many questions which arise, which are unanswered, that you just damn a judge and his reputation built over maybe 30 years. A judge with impeccable integrity till date, belonging to a line of succession of judges. I find it very hard to believe. And Maria, let me tell you my own experience. When I was Attorney General, I was living in 10 Motilal, the Nehru Marg, next to the Taj Hotel.
Okay, sir.
It had 8-7 quarters at the back, spread over at least half an acre. Maybe in my 3 years there, I went at the back once or twice. I never knew how many people were living, what were their families, who were their visitors, what is the kind of money or bags or other equipment they kept. Nobody knows. So I mean to say that if somebody kept money or somebody murdered somebody at the back, would I be an accessory to that murder because it was in my house? I mean, it is absolutely astounding that such a report has been given merely on the basis of some presumption. This report is not based even on preponderance of evidence or of a standard which is beyond reasonable doubt. That is the standard of our criminal jurisprudence. According to me, this report falls completely short of this standard. But the reputation of the judge is damned. And let me be practical. Whether the judge goes through the motion of impeachment or not, his reputation is finished. And even if he is exonerated, there is no way that he can be a judge once again. These are my thoughts which I wanted to share with you and the public.
Mr. Rohatgi, you have raised a number of questions and answers to that we do not have at the moment. And you also say, sir, that this report won't stand in the court because there are a number of presumptions. The 3 senior judges have also recorded eyewitness testimonies in this report, and they're quoting in these 64 pages. If you feel that there are several missing pieces in this puzzle, then shouldn't that be investigated? And what do you have to say that if you feel that Justice Verma's reputation has been completely damned, then what should Justice Verma and his family do now as the impeachment proceedings is likely to happen next month?
Look, there can be an investigation, but this investigation done by this judges committee, which is an in-house committee, it has no legal standing. It is only a committee formed by Parliament post admission of a motion for impeachment. It is only that committee which is recognized as a committee in law. So, if the judge is to go through the impeachment motion, it is that committee which will examine all witnesses and may come to a finding. As far as this report is concerned, it is only based on presumptions. It is not based on any standard of proof or of beyond reasonable doubt. So it's up to the judge now. He can face the inquiry. The inquiry under the impeachment motion will be of 3 judges, including a judge sitting or retired of the Supreme Court of India. That will be a proper quasi-judicial inquiry. It will examine all this material, all this evidence with a right of cross-examination to the delinquent. So the judge can have his own lawyer who can conduct cross-examination if he wants to be exonerated and clear his name. Now that is all that is left, for the Honorable Judge to do. I mean, then the law will take its own course. Let's see what happens.
Okay, Mr.
Depending on
Rodgi.
what course he wants to follow.
Sir, there are 55 witnesses, according to this report. Their testimonies were recorded and they were examined. You are of the opinion that that this doesn't have any legal, it won't stand in the court of law. Then how should this entire process be seen?
I want to know, what is the conclusion of the report? Who would have kept the money there? 55 witnesses did not say who brought the money or who left the money. I mean, some kind of a makeshift room which has got some rubbish articles in it. I mean, is it conceivable that you're going to have money of that amount? I mean, I had heard there were going to be sacks and sacks of money. Not a single sack was found intact or burnt. Where are those sacks? I mean, just to have 50 people examine, you examined the police and the fire brigade. Why did they not seize it? So you have some kind of a video which was uploaded by the Chief Justice, an unverified video. You just upload it, and the media itself, has played it to the gallery, to the hilt. Therefore, on that day itself, the judge's reputation is damned. So, I mean, just by saying 50 witnesses examined doesn't mean anything. You have to get to the bottom of it. And certainly this report does not get to the bottom.
So, if you feel that this report does not get to the bottom of it, then what next in this case? What next, for Justice Verma?
As you said, it requires a fuller probe. Now, if Parliament has to, admit the motion of impeachment, there will be a fuller probe. There will be a proper 3 judges inquiry, which will go into everything. And I mean, there is no manner of doubt that inquiry will be an impartial inquiry with a right of participation. Because this report doesn't have the right of participation of the judge. It has damned the judge. It has only given him a chance of explanation. So he has given his explanation, which they didn't find to be appropriate. But the fact of the matter is that the basic modicum of natural justice in our country is that you get a chance to cross-examine a witness. You have 50, 60 witnesses, no chance of cross-examination is given. What is the birth of this report? Especially when it has no proper findings.
All right, Mukul Rohatgi, former Attorney General of India, I appreciate your time. Let me bring in Mahesh Jethmalani, now Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, who's joining us live. Mr. Jethmalani, this report talks about half-burnt currency notes which were seen when the firefighters were putting out the blaze which spread to the storeroom in question. Many would say that this particular report completely nails Justice Verma and shows that his family and only his family had access to the storeroom, and that there was no scope of any outsider getting access without permission. So my question then is this now an open and shut case?
Maria, your question has multi-dimensions, frankly. But yes, I mean, this inquiry report, finally in the public domain, certainly discloses or puts Justice Verma in very poor light, right? In fact, there is a suggestion that there was an attempt to, or it actually happened that the money was removed from the premises after it was located, videoed, etc., by the fire and the police, and then it ceased to be there on the next day as well. So there are, the report itself has many startling findings, some which we've come to know about for the first time with the publication of this report. But, the issue is one of criminality. I keep repeating this in every interview which I've had on the subject, that impeachment is a process and a little cumbersome one, right? Which unfortunately, because the judge refuses to resign in spite of everybody calling upon him to do so, right? The parliament is forced to take, because nobody has, it is only for removal of him from office, right? The criminality right, has to be by virtue of a permission of the Chief Justice of India, which has been recognized by that very famous case in 1991 of 5 judges of the Supreme Court, right? That is of Veeraswamy's case. I mean, this incident now happened on the 14th of March, right? We are more than 3 months from the date of that fire and the discovery of this money. That it behoves the judiciary, right, to quickly clean up, and one way or the other, be fair as possible to Justice Verma, but to bring this to a swift conclusion, because every day that passes from that unfortunate episode, right, and of course some of the events in its aftermath, right? First a transfer, nothing done. Then Allahabad High Court sort of protests against them. Bar associations all over the country start howling, unfairness. Why should judiciary get? And then of course the whole process starts. So there has not only been, in my view, right, delay in the matter, but there's been some procedural reluctance as well in this case, so which is most unfortunate, right? If the Chief Justice is the final authority for sanctioning a criminal case or the registration of an FIR against a High Court or Supreme Court judge, right, then suo motu it should have been done, right? All right, if Justice Sanjeev Khanna wanted to wait, Chief Justice Sanjeev Khanna, as he then was, wanted to wait for an inquiry report to fortify himself, right? That inquiry report was in his possession before he actually retired, right? What is the point? I mean, I find the ball being thrown all the time by the judiciary to the legislature or the government, right? So impeachment only removes, or will serve to remove, if successful, Justice Verma from office. Now, Justice Verma is obviously going to go out dragging and screaming, because if he were to resign, right, if he was to resign, he would lose the protection of Veeraswamy, which says he can't be prosecuted unless the Chief Justice gives sanction. So we are in a terrible catch situation, 22 situation, which only the Chief Justice now can resolve. So let's await the return. I'm told Chief Justice Gavai is abroad at the moment and is expected to return tomorrow. So let's hope things speed up on his return. This is, as you said, as I keep repeating, impeachment is only to remove him from office. His prosecution, if he is to be prosecuted at all, can only be by the sanction of the CJI of India. CJI.
Yes. Mr. Jethmalani, there is a contrarian view, which is that there are a lot of presumptions in this report. And this report will not be able to stand in the court of law. There are more questions than answers after this report has been submitted. So is there a sense of jumping the gun as well as, as far as this report is concerned? And is Justice Verma, has he not been given a fair hearing? I want to know your opinion on this.
Well, I don't think there's any contrarian view which doesn't say there should be a criminal investigation, right? If this kind of amount of cash was found, and if you read between the lines of the inquiry report, right, the money is of a while they don't quantify it, they keep saying huge amounts. I mean, the bundles of 500 are found both on the ledge and on the floor to be 1.5 feet high, and it says it covered from the door to the other end of the room. 500 rupee notes. So, this kind of money was found in the possession of any ordinary citizen, right? And the question is one of possession. Right? It was always a criminal offense, whichever way you looked at it, right? Whether this money was put there by Justice Verma or someone on his behalf, or whether it was put by anybody else, as he says, to falsely implicate him, this was always a criminal offense revealed, right? The only question was, who done it? And since judges were involved, the Chief Justice of India had to be informed, and he had to take a call on whether to sanction a criminal investigation against him or not. Now, after all this material, you let the public decide whether there's enough material for sanctioning at least an investigation. The investigation might, after all, find Justice Verma completely innocent. We have now gone through pre-FIR stages in the form of a 3-judge 2 Chief Justices and another puny judge of a High Court, 3 of them have now had an inquiry. And they've said that there is enough material to suggest that that money belonged to Justice Verma. Short point. If that money belonged to Justice Verma as they held, right, is it not a case for a criminal prosecution? Because it's a clear-cut disreport assets by a public servant.
All right, Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani, really appreciate your time here on NDTV. So you heard from Harish Salve, Mukul Rohatgi, Mahesh Jethmalani. You can form your opinion with regards to this case. We are slipping into a short break. Coming up would be an exclusive interview with Karnataka Minister Priyank Kharge.
तू ही तो है जिसकी सच्चाई वाली क्लैरिटी की वजह से मैं आज यहाँ हूँ।
गोल्ड प्लस सिल्वॉक्सी मिरर्स, ऐसी क्लैरिटी कि आपको सिर्फ सच नजर आए, चाहे कितने भी साल बीत जाएं।
From the echo of the Trump tariffs to the geopolitical tensions in West Asia, and on the sidelines, a possible thaw in the frosty relations between India and Canada. I will bring you all the latest updates from the Kananaskis G7 Summit. NDTV, live from the G7 Summit in Canada. How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru. Only on NDTV 24x7.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of maximum city is infectious. I'm bringing that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti, also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
India's IT capital is always bustling, a city full of startups, stories and surprises. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
The markets move fast.
And so should your portfolio. Expert insights, real-time stock picks.
Do I buy Ola?
Should I hold ICICI for the long term?
Buy, sell or hold.
The answers you need, straight from the experts.
Callers from India and across the world. Connect live, ask, decide and invest wisely.
Your portfolio, your future. Ask Profit.
In today's
And more news, Karnataka Minister Priyank Kharge, who was not given clearance for a visit to the United States, today alleged that he is being singled out for refusal and said he would question the Foreign Ministry about this treatment. I'm quoting him, I will write to the Ministry of External Affairs why they denied clearances, why they denied support. The Chief Minister will write to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That's what he has said in an exclusive interview with NDTV. Let's listen in.
The
Well, we here at NDTV had, of course, put out this information that Minister Priyank Kharge was denied clearance to visit the United States as a part of the state delegation. He's come back from Paris. He's joining us today here. So if you could tell us what exactly happened. Take us through the sequence of events. When were you supposed to visit the United States? What was on the agenda and why was the clearance denied?
See, I'm not sure on why the clearances were denied. Generally, when a delegation is denied clearances, they give us valid reasons. Right now, there are no valid reasons denied. Now, the problem here is that when a delegation that is being led by me does not get clearances, but when the same delegation minus me, only the official officers delegation with the same agenda, same objective is given, gets approved, and a cabinet rank colleague of mine, we send it separately, it gets approved for the same this thing. So I think the MEA has the answering to do, not me.
So, but why do you think here, when your name was sent, that approval didn't come in? Because you're saying Mr. Sharad Bachegauda's name was referred later. So what prompted you to think that if you remove your name, probably approvals will come in?
So you tell me, again, it's not my job to explain this. So we had sent saying that I am leading a delegation, gets disapproved. I take my name out, put the same delegation, put the same meetings objectives, put the same probable impact. We have not changed a full stop or a comma, that gets approved. So how am I supposed? And if the MEA gives valid explanation saying that, look, these are against the interests of the country or investment policy of the country, and this is something that you should not be indulging in, we're okay with that. Or if they say that this is not the right proposal, resend it with these things, we are okay with that also. We could have done that also, but not giving us any reason and just stamping a denied thing. I mean, I don't know, it's like as if you are deporting somebody.
What kind of a bearing will this have, sir, do you think, in terms of investments coming into the state of Karnataka?
See, if the Prime Minister of India is very serious of MAGA plus MEGA equals mega, he needs to ensure that there is an equal playing field for everybody. I don't know, and if ministers are not seen at the right places with the right people, how do you expect us to convince them to invest in India? And we are not saying, and whatever investments come to Karnataka always has a cascading effect to the government, to the nation as well. Today we are one of the biggest economic growth engines in the technology sector, in the ESDM sector, and the biotech sector. And if the government of India thinks that Karnataka will not be able to deliver, I wonder which state will be able to deliver.
Last question, you just mentioned that some of the other ministers from other states also were denied. Do you have any names? What information do you have?
I cannot speak on their behalf, but I have the right information saying that a lot of other state ministers also have been denied such clearances from the government of India.
Thank you for speaking to NDTV. Well, that was Mr. Priyank Kharge going on to state that, there have been some serious issues pertaining to his clearance, and that's primarily, he's saying that it was because his name was a part of that, a delegation request that it was not approved by the MEA, and he's saying that he'll seek answers from the centre and from the MEA about the same. With me to journalist Govind, this is Deepak Bopana for NDTV.
Among the 241 people who lost their lives in the Air India plane crash in Ahmedabad on June 12th was First Officer Clive Kundar. The 32-year-old's body arrived from Ahmedabad this morning, a week after the crash, and was kept at the residence for over 2 hours for friends, family and neighbours to offer their final tributes. I'm leaving you with this.
The steady sound of drums and the cry of trumpets echoed outside the Kundar residence in Goregaon West. A tearful farewell as the final rites were performed for First Officer Clive Kundar, one of the 2 pilots who died in the crash of Air India flight AI171. Friends, family and neighbours gathered at his home for an emotional goodbye. Clive's mortal remains were kept at the residence for a few hours before cremating it. His parents, sister and close relatives sat by his side in quiet grief as friends and neighbours paid their last respects.
He was a very, very ambitious man. I know him for the last 5-6 years. We've been working out very regularly in the gym. all here are my gym friends only. So very ambitious, lot of dreams, amazing human. He was very down to earth. I never seen him saw anything like that. He was always smiling, would always greet anybody, no egos about him.
Later, as the coffin was taken for cremation, a brass band played slow, dignified music. The family walked closely behind, leaning on each other for strength. At the Civan cemetery, prayers were offered by priests and family before Clive was laid to rest.
May his soul rest in peace. That's it.
How did you know him?
We are gym buddies since last 3 years. He was a gem of a person. Very down to earth, very humble.
Clive had joined Air India in 2017 and had clocked over 1,100 hours of flying time. On June 12, he was in the cockpit alongside Captain Sumit Sabharwal when AI171 crashed within seconds after takeoff in Ahmedabad. What caused the crash is under investigation.
I mean, we are all Clive's gym friends, gym buddies. We all used to meet at that same time to work out and all. Of course, he used to travel, we used to travel, but other than that, he was a very great person. I'm like shattered, we are all shattered, we're not.
A young life cut short and a promising career in aviation lost. But for those who knew Clive, it is his warmth and humility they will miss the most.
गोल्ड प्लस ऑप्टिमिस्टिक रिफ्लेक्टिव ग्लास लगाओ, धूप की गर्मी को दूर भगाओ और बिजली का बिल भी बचाओ।
News is not just headlines, it is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and bring you the unparalleled clarity you deserve in a world clouded by misinformation. We are bold, we are direct. Newsnight, for the news in your interest. Only on NDTV 24x7.
Why was there a hurry? Was it the government that was in a hurry?
I don't want to blame anyone.
Joining us today here in the NDTV newsroom.
Government cannot walk away from this responsibility.
Cricket is religion of sort in this country.
Would you like to comment on what happened?
What is the condition of the injured at this point? How many people died?
What exactly happened? You have lost your daughter.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
A very, very good evening. Now you're talking of the war drums that are literally deafening. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will not rule out striking Iran's supreme leader. You've heard that right. He's repeated that again. He says all options are on the table. After the Iranian missiles that you have seen who literally slammed into 4 sites there today, including a hospital, Israel has also hit back. What did they do? They targeted the Iraq nuclear reactor, but is the Iron Dome leaking? Again, that is a question that a lot of people are asking.
What is happening? Why is Israel not able to repel the kind of attacks we are seeing on our screens? Does this mean that the Iron Dome is under pressure? It, remember, was the shield that once stopped absolutely everything, but now it has been pierced. It's a full-blown blitz that just may be hours away, and then you have 3 US warships. You have the B-52 stealth bombers. And Iran right now is encircled. It is also strike ready. You're talking of the US. So is Trump going to be backing Israel, or is Trump going to be leading the charge? This is an important question that everyone is asking. And in the middle of all this, the supreme leader of Iran, he is standing alone. He doesn't have allies anymore around him. There is no China, there is no Russia, there is absolutely no help coming in. And Trump, even Trump has been dining with Pakistan, imagine. The same Pakistan that inflicts terror against India, and then this man, the United States of America's president, is dining with Asim Munir. Can you really trust that man? I mean, there are so many questions as you watch this, also from India looking at this. And how is it that you can have good terrorist and bad terrorist? What happens next? But first up, as always, we get you breaking updates on a story that is developing in real time. And as promised, you have the first response from Benjamin Netanyahu, who earlier was at one of the sites that has been attacked earlier, that has seen some bit of damage. And Benjamin Netanyahu again has reiterated that same warning. He says all options are on the table. He's again urged the US to say that you have to get into this war because we have to ensure that right now there could be no nuclear threat. And more details of what we've heard from him are flashing on your screens as Iran has struck that Israeli hospital. And you also have Israel saying that Iran has crossed the line. Let's listen into that reaction coming in.
We're targeting military sites. We're targeting nuclear sites. We're targeting missile sites. They're targeting a hospital. In this hospital, there are patients who are immobile. They can't even move. Right next to it is a children's ward, a baby's ward, infants. They're targeting civilians because they're a criminal regime. They're the arch terrorists of the world. They want to have nuclear terrorism, which will put the entire world under nuclear blackmail, and they would use these weapons. That's what the Ayatollah Khamenei says that he would do. He would use these weapons to wipe Israel off the map. Well, he's not going to. We're not going to let him. President Trump will do what's best for America. I trust his judgment.
Let's get you more breaking updates coming in. The IRGC, in fact, has said that this is the 15th wave of attacks on Israel that has been launched through missiles, through drones, and they've all targeted Tel Aviv. In fact, the Haifa military sites are also under attack as we speak. We'll get you those images also on your screens. Iran has struck the military industrial centers, and about 100 combat drones have been launched. These are also suicide drones. They've targeted the air defense system. The IRGC has vowed that there are going to be more missile strikes. So even right now when you're speaking, you're looking at these images on your screens. There is absolutely no let up. It is day 7 of this big escalation that you're seeing, and clearly now you have people getting really worried about how far this escalation could go. Let's also, without wasting more time, get you the quick 5 war updates. What has happened in the day so far that you must know. There are a lot of these dramatic images also that we'll play out on your screens, the ones that you see there. Israel, remember, has attacked the Iranians' Arak heavy water reactor. This has again drawn a lot of sharp response from around world capitals. Those are those images that I'm just referring to. The second big war update that you need to know is that Iran has also struck an Israeli hospital. The images are very, very disturbing. You see patients, you see children all lying there in blood. We also did later see Benjamin Netanyahu rushing to the spot, and from there, he's again put out that clear warning. This is our third breaking update on the story where Iran also, right now, as we speak, is facing almost a near total internet blackout. So there is no way that you might have these videos coming out in real time and information coming in real time. So a lot of this that you will see on your screens could possibly be delayed. But the action is happening right now. This brings us to our fourth important war update, where Israel has claimed that 2/3 of the Iranian missile silos have been hit. This is important because looking at ballistic missiles being used, even the cruise missiles, and now Israel saying that about 2/3 of the Iranian missile silos have been hit as far as this particular development is concerned. And the fifth important war update that again you must know about is that the IDF has claimed that Iran has launched 450 ballistic missiles. 450 is what the IDF claims. But a lot of this, remember, is about the Iron Dome. Where is the Iron Dome? Is it still working? Is it under pressure? And that's going to be our next update that we are now putting our focus on. Because clearly, how are you looking at Iran being able to attack and their missiles actually breaching that Iron Dome, getting inside, hitting hospitals and even the stock exchange? And I want to quickly now request our team to put out those graphics to help you understand what are we talking about the Iron Dome. Is that, again, a point of concern as far as Israel is concerned? And let's play that out if possible, please. And we'll be looking at those details on your screens in just a moment. But you're also reading those breaking developments of what Netanyahu has again said, and they are lauding Trump. They believe that Trump can get into this war right now, and we can have a very, very different response. So is the Iron Dome under pressure? Why we say this? Look at the entire sequence of events. June the 19th, that is earlier today, you have the Iranian missile that hit the Soroka hospital. It actually breaches the Iron Dome. It hits the hospital. 240 plus people are injured right now, a lot of them grievously. Let's bring up the second important detail as far as the Iron Dome is concerned, and that's now on your screens. Is this now a new threat? Why we say this is because multi-warhead ballistic missiles have breached the defenses of the Iron Dome of Israel. Do remember during Operation Sindur, there was a lot of conversation about this Iron Dome, and India also has a similar response system, and that is why we were able to repel a lot of these missiles and drones that came in from Pakistan. And likewise, let's get the third important pointer also on our screens. Now, there has been a barrage. So when you continuously keep firing, the idea is to ensure that the defense system weakens. Now, 400 plus missiles is what the Iron Dome has been able to receive so far. There are drones, there are cruise attacks in just 6 days. Look at the number, 400 missiles in 6 days. That is how bad the situation has become. Let's bring up our next important pointer. This is about the interception rate. When you have a missile, when you have the Iron Dome, how many are intercepted? That is what you would want to know. About 90% of the missiles are being intercepted is what the IDF claim, and the breaches are still happening. One of the breach was again what happened at the Soroka hospital earlier today, where we have seen people sustaining injuries. This brings us to our next important point. Is there a tactic that has been employed by Iran, to ensure that this becomes, the Iron Dome becomes overloaded, because of which it stops functioning, or there are problems here? Because Iran is saturating the Iron Dome with continuous barrage of missiles. That possibly could also explain the reason of this saturation. System is strained. There are Arrow missile stocks that are critically low right now, and they need a resupply. And that is why, again and again, you're looking at Israel that is urging the US to get into this war. They say you have to stop Iran at all costs. This brings us to our next important point. What is the US support you're talking about in this entire Iron Dome? Remember, there is another system that is called the Patriot and the THAAD systems that are also deployed. So it is not just the Iron Dome, it is the Patriot and the THAAD system that are also working right now to repel all these missiles, all these drone launches that are coming from Iran. But would it be fair to say that the Iron Dome has collapsed? For the moment, no. It is not a collapse. Why? Because the dome is still working, but yes, it has been stretched thin. It is working more than what possibly its capacity is. For how long can it sustain is also a question we will answer during the course of this show here. Now, is there a tactical shift when you look at Iran? Because Iran has started to evolve new missile designs, and the idea is to have a smarter attack so that you can breach the Iron Dome and hit at Israel. So who really is funding Iran? That is also a question you must ask. Who are those powers standing with Iran who's helping Iran in this technology? So what is next? The critical important question. There could be more breaches. That is likely. And Israel, like I said, needs an urgent resupply. All of this is also going to be coming in from the US, but Israel time and again has said that this is not just a regional war, not just about Iran and Israel. This is a huge war about the geopolitics of the region, and this is where the US needs to come in. Now, who else but a very important guest that I want to introduce on this show. His name is Amir Avivi. He's a Brigadier General of the Reserve, the ultimate insider of the IDF. Amir, if I may introduce you like that, I will, ask you the upfront question. Is the Iron Dome leaking? Is it failing? Is it under pressure?
The air defense of Israel is working very well. These ballistic missiles that are being shot at Israel are intercepted mostly by Arrow 3. This system intercepts these ballistic missiles in space, and it has more than 90% success, but it's hard to reach 100%. So occasionally, there is a ballistic missile that manages to go through the Israeli air defense that is also coupled with American air defense. And this requires the citizens of Israel to be alert and ready and inside the bunkers.
Okay, Amir, what you say is important, but tell me something. Is the Iron Dome still reliable? I mean, this could be a real cause of concern. Though you say that Israel right now is able to deal with the situation effectively, but are we also talking and looking at a post-Iron Dome era now?
So we see that Israel is managing to destroy systematically the ballistic capabilities of Iran. Iran wanted to shoot hundreds of ballistic missiles on each event, but they are not managing to do so, and they are shooting less and less. Israel destroyed more than 40% of the launchers in Iran. And at the moment, Israel is perfectly capable of defending its airspace, and it's working well both on offensive and in the defense of Israel.
Okay, Amir, I think there are so many more important points about the Iron Dome that we must be talking about in the next few minutes. But I'm just requesting you to stay with us as I want to wind up this conversation and look at what is the role of the US. How far is the US willing to go? What is the US doing right now as we speak? Because don't forget, no matter what Donald Trump might want to tell you that, he's not telling anyone what he wants to know. But let's put up details of what America is doing right now. And these are details that you must know. Now, in the center here is Iran. If you're wondering where is the US, where is Israel, wait for the details to come in, because I'm going to tell you more about the US military footprint in the Middle East. All the bases that the US has been able to set up very, very close to Iran. We let those graphics come on our screens one by one. The first important detail is Qatar. Now, in Qatar, you have a base that is called the Al Udeid Air Base. What is important for you to know as far as this air base is concerned? It is the largest US military base. It has about 100 aircrafts and an equal number of drones. About 8,000 troops is what can be stationed at this particular base in Qatar. It's a major air operations hub. And look at the distance between Qatar and Iran to help you understand what has the US's game plan been. We'll bring up the next location now on our screens, and you continuously should look at Iran and the next distance. Very tiny dot there next to Qatar is you will see Bahrain. Now, what is important in Bahrain for you to know is that the base is called the Naval Support Activity. This can house about 9,000 personnel. So look at the numbers and keep adding those numbers, because about 40,000 to 50,000 US personnel are stationed over all these bases. Then the US Navy's 5th Fleet Headquarters, again at Bahrain, and the distance between Bahrain and Iran for you to know very, very quickly. Let's bring up the next location also as we'll keep expanding this map. The next location here is Saudi Arabia. Again, this has been in the news, it's been in the conversation. The base is the Prince Sultan Air Base. 2,700 troops can be stationed at this particular point. It's a strategic air power base that is essentially used by the US. Brings us to our next important location on this map. This is in Kuwait. And keep looking at the location, how America has ensured that Iran is encircled, because its presence there in the Middle East is equally important. Now in Kuwait, you have the Camp Arif Jan. What is important about this camp is that this is located about 55 kilometers southeast of the Kuwaiti city. Key logistics and a joint force base is what the camp Arif Jan is all about. This brings us to our next important detail that's going to go up on your map, and this is the UAE, where you have the Al Dhafra Air Base. 3,500 troops. 3,500 troops can be stationed here on this particular base. It also hosts advanced aircrafts like the F-22 Raptor stealth fighters. It also houses surveillance planes, including drones, intel, surveillance, and strike operations. So look at the kind of machines, look at the kind of men, the numbers, the manpower that the US has been able to ensure, and this is just not it. We have another location, this is Iraq. So if you look at the entire axis that is being created next to Iran here in red, you will understand the significance of all these bases that have been in operation for the longest time. Now in Iraq, you have the Erbil Air Base. It's been used by the US forces for air operations in northern Iraq and in Syria in particular. So this is how you have Iran already getting encircled, but just not it. We'll get you more details also of what more is the US doing as we speak to ensure that there is enough and more pressure on Iran right now to buckle down or else face the consequences. I want to go back to Amir and ask him the next important question. As we've been looking, Amir, at a lot of this conversation about the US and everything else, but talking again of the Iron Dome, and because we see a lot of these missiles still being picked up, intercepted, how many more such waves you think that Israel can absorb before you have real gaps that start to open up and before you have more damage that possibly could be caused?
So I think that this war is going to be not more than 2 more weeks. Iran is going to fall. This regime is going to fall. The Israelis are dominating Iranian skies. It took us 2 days to bring this regime on its knees, and IDF is operating freely all over Iran, destroying their nuclear sites and capabilities, and also systematically degrading the government's capability to rule. So really the big question is how long it will take until the regime falls or Iran surrenders. And we're not far away. And the big question is America going into the fight? Are we going to see strategic bombers also participating in the destruction of the nuclear sites? And this we'll know in the coming 2 days.
So, Amir, you've touched on a lot of important points. You've spoken of a regime change that you're looking at in Iran. You've also spoken about how long possibly you can sustain, and you're saying 2 weeks. You're also speaking of the role of the US. Now, tell me more about this. How long before you believe that you can have a regime change in, Iran? How will you do this? And what is the role of the US?
So I think that when we see a regime that wants to eradicate completely the state of Israel, that is seeking nuclear capabilities, that is shooting indiscriminately citizens, the messages we hear from the Minister of Defense and the Prime Minister of Israel is, we are not ruling the possibility of eliminating the head of the regime. And we might see it in the coming week or two. I think that Israel is perfectly capable of defending its airspace for a long time. And long before we'll have issues with air defense, this war is going to be won decisively against Iran.
Okay, so I heard those words, and I think our viewers must have also heard those words. You have an ultimate IDF insider who says just 2 weeks, and he also does say that it just took 2 days for this regime in Iran to actually come down on its knees. Amir, I'm again requesting you to stay with us, as I want to touch more upon a point that he just made. This is the role of the US. Remember, we just told you more about how Iran has just gotten encircled with a lot of these bases. But what more is the US doing right now as we speak? What are the kinds of machines that are already out, at least in the skies and at least in water? We'll bring up those details now on our screens one by one. Remember, as the US is ramping up the military presence, now there is this aircraft carrier that is called the USS Nimitz. It's a very, very important name. It's a very important detail for anyone interested in understanding how do you do this firefighting and a lot of these things. It has been redeployed to West Asia. So it was in another part of the world and it has been moved towards West Asia. It's a huge carrier. It's a huge carrier and it can carry about 5,000 personnel just on this carrier and 60 plus aircraft. Just think of it, how huge this is going to be, where you have 60 plus aircraft right on top of this carrier. And that is already on the move as we speak. And over on top of this, you have 30 KC-135 Stratotankers. These again are heavy machines that are used by the US and KC-46A Pegasus. And all of them right now are being moved towards Europe. So there is a movement. Why is this movement happening right now? Is this just a pressure tactic, or there is a plan that Donald Trump is working accordingly? And there are also aerial refueling planes. I mean, these are planes that can actually refuel a lot of these fighter jets while they are in air. All of them being shifted to Europe again as we speak. Is this just a coincidence? We will let our viewers decide this. And all this, what does this entail? What does this tell us? That this is about readiness for extended operations. Because we do not know for how long this is going to continue. Today is day 7 of this entire escalation, and the US obviously right now is giving a lot of important signals. So Amir, when you talk of a lot of these signals as far as the US is concerned, I want to know one thing. Do you believe that Israel today is feeling abandoned by the US? Because this is the same US and the same Donald Trump who's having a lunch with Asim Munir, the same man who's responsible for the Pahalgam terror attack. I mean, so much for the hypocrisy of America when it comes to terror.
Israel and the US are fully coordinated throughout this war. The US is assisting a lot Israel with intelligence, with air defense capabilities, and we're hoping to see the US also attacking, because this is not just about Iran. Israel can deal with Iran. This is about really stabilizing the globe, because if the US says, if we are not shot, we're not going to intervene, the message to China is, okay, we'll invade Taiwan. We are not going to shoot Americans. Or the Russians will invade other countries in Europe and will not attack Americans. Does it mean America is not going to intervene? So this is a global issue. It's not just a regional issue, and it's not just about Iran. Israel can perfectly manage with Iran. The question is, are we going to stabilize the globe, or it is going to destabilize and we'll see more wars coming in the future?
Okay, Amir, but I must also just be very brute. Can you and can Israel really trust Donald Trump, who calls Pakistan name earlier? He calls Pakistan deceitful. And today he's saying that Pakistan is a strong and a responsible ally. So is it the credential of Donald Trump also under question here?
President Trump is seeking really an alliance, a Western, Israeli, moderate Sunni alliance that will extend all the way to Indonesia. And India has a big part in this alliance in creating new routes of trade. And President Trump wants to see more countries siding with the US, and we respect that. But at the end of the day, we also hope to see leadership. This is a time for Churchills, not Chamberlains. And we're hoping to see President Trump coming as a Churchill, just as Netanyahu is leading this war. And if the US goes into the fight, this war will shorten a lot. It will save a lot of lives. And attacking Iran, it's not about beginning a war. Attacking Iran means the end of the war. It means bringing down the Shia axis and ending the war in the Middle East and moving towards peace agreements and prosperity.
Okay, I think what you said again is very, very important. And I do realize that these are very difficult times. And clearly the leadership of Donald Trump is what you people also hope is going to come forward. Amir, I'm just again requesting you to stay with me as I want to expand this conversation again to US, what the US is doing. So remember, we've seen about the bases encircling of Iran. Then we got you details of the military footprint that you see of the US again right now, and a lot of more push. But now I want to talk about a plane. Now you must be thinking, what is this plane got to do with Iran versus Israel? But let me bring up the details, because this is a plane that interestingly has been spotted over Washington in the last few hours, and people are curious, what is this plane doing there? What is this plane called? This is America's doomsday plane. This is almost a representational video that you see on your screens, just an image of this. It is actually called the doomsday plane. But this is a Boeing E-4B Night Watch. This is the technical name of this particular plane that again has drawn a lot of eyebrows as it was spotted in Washington. Now this is nicknamed the Flying Pentagon. Think of this. This plane is called the Flying Pentagon. Obviously for a reason, Pentagon represents the defense headquarters of the US. More details on your screens. This plane, why is it special? Because this can survive nukes, any kind of nuclear weapon, it is resistant to it. It can also survive cyber attacks, absolutely unaffected by it. And not just this, even the electromagnetic interference, nothing can bother this plane. That is how sturdy this is, and that is why this is so special. Now, it has a mobile war command for the president. So you can have the president, you can have the vice president, all important people when it comes to the government, all who travel on this, and they can be in touch with whoever they want to. Then this can also launch retaliatory strikes mid-air. It can be in the air and it can still strike back. That is the kind of capability that this particular plane has. Now there are about 4 of such planes that the US has, 4, and one of them is always on the standby, as in one of them is always ready with all preparations, with all systems and checks in places. This can carry 112 personnel on board. Again, for you, important to remember this number. It can fly 7,000 plus miles. It can stay airborne for about 35 hours, more than a day. This plane can actually be in the air. So this plane is spotted over Washington. It takes an unusually different route, is what a lot of news reports tell us. What is Trump planning? What is US planning? Is there already a plan in place? Clearly a question that we still don't have an answer to. But I want to go back to Amir with that particular question and a lot more, Amir. As we were discussing all these details, and I have to talk about this fight against terror. You know, both India and Israel have borne the brunt of terror. Both countries have drawn their own red lines. But when it comes to the US, do you feel still that the US needs to do a lot more in this fight against terror?
Yes, definitely. We want to, the relationship with Israel and India is very, very strong. And it's a strong alliance. And we want to deepen it. And we really appreciate this friendship. And we have a lot of cooperation talking about military exchange of knowledge and so on. And we definitely want to strengthen this. And I think that moving towards the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia, and really connecting the trade between India and the Middle East through Israel, this is the key to strengthening these relations.
Okay, Amir, as we were having this conversation, on our screens are 2 defining images. One is Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran. The other is Saddam Hussein. I want to ask you that, do you believe that an assassination possibly could happen of the supreme leader? Is that what Israel could be wanting to do?
It's very serious because we understand that it's not enough to destroy the nuclear sites or ballistic missile capability. If this regime stays, so in 2 or 3 years, we'll see the regime again seeking the destruction of Israel and the West. And I think this is terrible. 80% of the Iranians don't want this regime. It's oppressing them. It's endangering and destabilizing the whole Middle East. And I think we have a true opportunity to do a real change that will impact for generations in the Middle East and bring down this evil regime that is really seeking global domination.
All right, Amir Ravivi, for the moment, thank you so much. So a regime change or an assassination is what Israel speaks about. Donald Trump says, I know what I have to do, but I'm not telling you just yet. But NDTV will continue to keep you on top of that story. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.
As the Iran-Israel war escalates, Indian students in the crossfire.
As soon as possible evacuate किया जाए.
War zone worries grip parents. The next Indian mass evacuation ahead. NDTV at Ground Zero.
Is your business future ready? Join the 13-week strategic ESG certification program for business sustainability and growth for CXO and business leaders by NDTV, Terry and Zenora. Master global ESG frameworks, gain real-world tools and lead with impact. Starts July 13th. Enroll now and power your business with sustainability.
Do you really know the company you invest in? What is the real picture behind presentations and claims? Is the outlook as rosy as the company claims? Know Your Company, powered by NDTV Profit Research, shines a light on the biggest stock market movers.